Javier with Gravatate will be presenting today. Excellent. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Really enjoy the opportunity to present Gravatate to you all. My name's Javier Castro. I'm the CEO of Gravatate. Rosemarie Savino here is our COO, and we also have a mentor as part of our Startups Ignite, which is housed here with John Yu's Office Evolution. So Ray, thank you for being here as well. If you are willing to play along, which we would love, you can visit our website, gravatate.com, and that's properly spelled for us, Gravatate. And in the upper right corner, you could create an account. And it'll only take a minute. You'll have to verify your email, but it'll come in handy later when we try to get you in to one of our workspaces so you can join quickly and experience the tool. So we don't want to bury you in PowerPoint slide speak, so we can just get started. The communication platform for business teams. And I'll tell you a little bit about my story. So I started Gravatate a few years ago. I was a business owner, and at the time I recognized that I worked so hard to find clients and worked so hard to find employees and vendors and even the right business groups to join and network with. And the very next step, we're sort of beating each other up with emails, right? It just didn't feel like enough of a communication tool to really corral and manage these expensive resources. So I surveyed the market, and I didn't see anything that was lightweight enough yet professional. I didn't see anything that was flexible and affordable, so I started building it. And you might say, well, what did you build? And really, Gravatate, the crux of Gravitate is two main pieces of functionality. Workspaces are really a lot like modern distribution lists. They're very human-centric, and I'll give you a few examples. We run our business through about 9 or 10 workspaces. One is for our investors, so they have one place to come and see information and be informed. We have our leadership team, we have a functional team, the technology team, and then we also work with and collaborate with our key vendors through workspaces. And we'll get a look at what a workspace is, which is part of the account creation process. The other piece is chat, right? So I wanted some separation from my personal cell phone number and texting, right? Because in my world I have text from my wife, now I'm getting reminders from my dentist, and text is starting to mimic email with this unsolicited volume. And I wanted something more of a pure play for my business relationships, for my clients, for my coworkers, and things of that nature. So what are your options without dwelling on it too much? Your options are email, which are very much time-stamped, filed by sender. It's kind of out of context. It's not particularly engaging or human. And then, to complement email, I think we've all kind of gone to text, and that has some of the issues that I mentioned earlier. You're leveraging your phone number as a business owner. Your employees are representing you with their personal cell phone number in these text threads that really belong to them, not to you. So we took the best of email and text and brought it into one tool. And this is the part where a lot of people reference other tools they're either actively using or have heard of. And really, it's not a zero-sum game, right? I think some folks have gone to more consumer-centric tools like WhatsApp or GroupMe or Messenger, and those have certain limitations. They don't necessarily transfer to the desktop. They sort of also have a similar problem of being mixed in with your personal life. And then these other business tools, which we respect and admire very much, they're a lot heavier and a little more vertical-centric, more like an all-employee, larger organization. So what's missing, in our opinion, is this flexible intercompany tool for small business owners, volunteer groups, even research teams at universities and things of this nature. So despite that competitive landscape, you might ask, well, why would we pick Gravatate? And it's for some of what I just mentioned, but primarily I'll highlight here is we don't have a real guillotine-style adoption. You all don't have to adopt on a date certain. So we very much didn't set out to kill email. We very much embraced it and integrated with it because we know human behavior. It takes a little bit of time for people to adopt a new tool that's actually going to benefit them. And as a result, you can launch your workspace, and we call it a tag-along feature. Some of these folks could join over time, but they're still in the information flow. So it really takes away some of the friction of getting started. It's very intuitive. Everything we've done is meant to take the best of motions you're already used to, whether that's texting or emailing. It's very flexible, and that's probably a better visual in a few slides, and it's very affordable. So a lot of the sort of the right side competing tool sets, price per user per month. So if I were to drive this organization through one of those competing tools, it might be $8 times 45, that really gets expensive. And so the market that we're serving, the intercompany and small business market, we price per workspace. So it's very affordable to engage and organize a bunch of people without running up a huge bill. And for us, it works because it's a scale play. We expect to power a lot of conversations and workspace relationships. Really, you can read this. I think the key is to sort of elevate. It's hard to separate what's important and what's not important through email, and it's a little harder to establish these more professional conversations and history threads of what you're doing, either as a team or in a one-to-one relationship. So as Gravatate, Rosemary and I have a conversation thread in Gravatate, right? So we don't really have some information in text and a bunch of information in email. It's really in one, she's one person, I'm one person. Our conversation thread captures everything we talk about, basically. And of course, we have other threads with our CTO, and we have workspaces with vendors and clients and things like that. So it's a real nice way to elevate the access to information and the collaboration and the conversations above all that sort of other noise. And I think it's best to show it to you in a slide or two. This is potentially a little repetitive on the flexibility. It is important though. A lot of the competing tools force you to create a group, and then I can message with somebody specifically. Gravatate's much more meant to mimic texting and very horizontal, so you don't necessarily have to create a workspace first and get everyone in it to then message them. You can pick your CPA, or you can pick an employee that you're working with and just take that conversation thread into Gravatate. And then our feeling is that if you're in there for that conversation, eventually you will find the need or find a reason to start a workspace, because maybe the relationship or the work that you're sharing is deeper and needs the functionality of a workspace. So I see I'm at 7 minutes. Tate, playing on our name Gravatate, Tate is really our assistant. I hesitate to call it a bot because we really think it's just a behind-the-scenes helper to help you as a business person do more things in your daily life. So if you're chatting and you want to schedule an appointment, or your workspace team, you want a one-touch conference calling, or you want a template for meeting minutes, these little quick wins within our product will help you be a more productive and effective business professional. This is a glimpse of our upcoming design enhancement, and it sort of speaks, the big thing for us is the harmony between the users that we're powering, the pricing, and the product itself. So here, it might be a little hard to see, but you have sort of baskets. It's very intercompany flexible. So this is Gravatate and some of the workspaces. If you participate in Gravatate, you would see some of this. But you might also be involved with another organization, a volunteer group, and that would be here. So I see a lot of B&Iers in the room. It could be that B&I is sponsoring some workspaces to organize and communicate with you all, but you might be part of A Million Cups as well, which could be here, and your own business there. So it's very, very much playing to this intercompany, the reality of 80% of the market, which is self-employed, 1099 relationships. Not everyone has the same email. Not everyone wants to pay per user per month in one of these heavy tool sets. With that said, let me blow through some of this stuff. This will be step 2 for any of you who created an account. I just want to highlight a different method of getting folks in. If you created an account at the first step, you could come into the Actions tab and you could type in this code and hit enter, and you would join the workspace. So what I'm highlighting is, as an organizer or leader, I can certainly email invite all of you if I had your emails. I could even go to Outlook or Gmail and copy a bunch of them and paste it in. But this motion is a little bit more like, you know, it's more of a code-based, come to us, join pretty painlessly and effortlessly, and then you would be in the workspace with all your colleagues. So it's an alternative way to form your workspace. I wanted to share that. So I could jump out and I could pause for questions. I could jump out and show you the tool a little bit.
What is your ask? What is your issue,
Okay,
opportunity, or challenge?
The ask is on the feedback. So we're part of this Startups Ignite here that I mentioned earlier. They've been helping us with messaging. So I think it'd be great to just get a feel, and we have thick skin, so you can say what you really feel, which I think you would anyway. But we welcome it. Is, you know, the messaging of what Gravatate is and some of the problems it solves. We'd love feedback on our messaging in general. And then I do have a pricing slide I could pull up that I could sort of take a temperature on whether that's in the right ballpark or not.
Dan?
Yes.
Javier, just a quick question. You said to go online and sign up. Is there an app for it as well?
There is, that's right, good point, thank you. So we just went to the website because it was easier for you to create that account, but yes, then you can go to the Android store or the iPhone store and download the app.
Just like you can for the 1 Million Cups app.
Exactly. And the web app is a responsive web app that is well suited for desktop use. Yes.
So I'm in the app. Do you sync your contacts through, like, from your phone contacts, from your email contacts, and like, so does it sync your calendar as well, or is that something that?
All things that are on our roadmap. Yeah,
Okay.
the calendar has some integration,
Okay.
but not full syncing.
Okay.
And then the contacts piece is one that we've sort of not really struggled with, but the idea is it becomes a little bit of a private network sort of channel of communication where we don't know if we want to just in bulk talk to all your contacts in LinkedIn or stuff, because then it takes it away from being a real place where you're doing business with the people that matter the most in you know, that moment of time.
So you just manually within.
You can invite, yeah, now once you are in Gravatate, so like if all of you join this workspace, then everyone's information is there for you to message and create other workspaces. So you do easily build your inventory of contacts, but we didn't do it so that it just sucks everything up from your phone or from LinkedIn, because, well, we're open to feedback. That convenience has pros and cons to
So
it.
if I want to invite somebody, I have to. Have,
Well, I could just pull it up.
yeah.
Well, since we seem to start in the QA section, let me just
Sorry.
briefly say real quick, when you ask a question, I'll point to you, when you raise your hand, please, and I'll point to you in order of which you raised your hand to keep things moving. Please say your name, the organization you're with before asking your question, and then we ask that you please keep your questions brief and to the point, unlike, say, some, you know, congressional or Senate hearings that can go on for 15 minutes. So with that said, he's pulling up the information with regards to your question, and then we'll go from there. And
Sorry.
who's,
Brooke Walker, Fox Business.
Okay, I see you're in there. Thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you effectively use the code. So our real, to answer the question, is just the plus sign. So here we're in 1 Million Cups Tyson's. It's a workspace, and I could go through the 4 main tabs of the workspace and the functionality, but in general, I created it so I'm labeled as the leader, but I can delegate that role to others, so I can make any of you a leader quite easily. I'm used to mouse. I'll make you an admin. Okay, so Jen, now you have the ability, and what I just did was I just delegated to Jen Dalton the ability to see the plus sign and invite other people. Okay, so if you're like the leader or you were delegated that sort of role, you could then invite people. So we didn't want to get into like 10 layers of permissions and start to become too heavy, like more of a SharePoint. We wanted just 2 levels. You created it, and you can also delegate some of the administrative duties of creating that workspace. So again, I can hit the plus sign and show you how you can grab 16 emails from your Outlook or Gmail and paste it in. So you can invite people in bulk, or you can do this code loop, which is what I showed, you know, here this morning. And this is a workspace. It has 4 main areas: the messaging, conversation. They're nested conversations, so it's not just timestamp chat. It's yeah, maybe if you. It's a way to post a question and get answers that are underneath the post, and it really starts to memorialize conversations. And what's interesting is it starts to create a history of that team and that project. So if somebody new comes in, they can catch up on what were those, like for example with some of our vendors, you know, as you're forming that relationship, there's a ton of Q&A. That's normally littered through your email, and how do you really share that with the new hire that needs to understand what that relationship is? So there's a really neat like history archive component. But I tend to talk too much, so let me pause.
Well, before, we have one question here, but before we go to the first question outside, I would have a quick one for you, because your thought and your pain point, your trouble point that you're bringing up is regards to messaging. So far, so that we have a better understanding, what's been your most successful messaging to date? What organization, what industry, where do you find that you've actually had some traction?
So we use it as a small business, and we have some small business owners who are coming off of WhatsApp or even Slack to use it. But our gut is that the business groups has been the easier market to serve, because I think they have that intercompany pain point that we serve well. So if I were to say, and the accelerator is helping us focus on this, business groups is where we have the most traction. And what we like about that is that business groups are made up of business owners, so as they get comfortable for group purposes, they could then turn around and deploy it in their business. We're finding that the small business owner makes the adoption bigger than it really is. You know, there's this, I'll get to it next week, or, you know, so we've kind of gone to business groups as a priority market.
Director Marcus, Blue 16 Media. I swear by this app or software called Basecamp. How is that different from Basecamp? Because I swear by it, I put everything in it, everything organized. So what would be the big difference?
And John, you uses Basecamp. We respect Basecamp. They're like our superhero, because they're privately held and they are gushing cash, and it's a big success. But they are much heavier on projects. So I think as you go into Basecamp, you really have to be like a project person. And you're running projects, and there's task management, which we're going to introduce, but we're like a more human communication priority, lighter weight version of Basecamp, which we think will help us, you know, reach a larger audience.
And then Krista.
How do you guys price yourselves, and then have you received any other feedback on your pricing?
We have had a lot of pricing versions. What we landed on that I could share here is, feels right to us, but obviously this is a great opportunity to see if it feels right to you all. And Rosemary, jump in if I'm missing anything. So again, we're not pricing per user per month, we're pricing per workspace. So I think it's worth noting that if I just invited you all into this workspace, it's free to you. You're our guest effectively. And you can also turn around, this isn't totally built yet, but you could turn around and invite people to chat, which if you kind of peel the onion back a little, we're converting your email into the ability to have texting conversations without the phone number. It's pretty interesting when you play it out a little, but that's all part of our freemium model. So you can come in and you have a workspace to sort of experience and invite up to 7 people. So this is sort of the try before you buy concept. You can chat, and the reason we did that is because we want you all to also bring people into our platform, right? And that's part of our freemium. But as soon as you go to create a second workspace, or you want a workspace to be greater than 7, then you have this starter mighty pricing plan of $19.95, you get 4 workspaces. We think that the logic behind it, you all tell me if it feels right or fair, but the logic is that these business groups can probably get a lot done with 4 workspaces and never pay more than $19.95. I confessed as a small business that we get up to 9 or 10 workspaces, so our pricing here is to sort of power that business, if you will, for 10 workspaces at $39.95. But that Pro is our more scalable version, where you could just buy a basket of workspaces, 6 for $20 extra, and grow with that subscription.
Krista?
I'm looking at this with my business because we have all these different factors going on. We've got our software for the scheduling, like you get your dentist appointment, people get their training appointment. Then I have the email, and then I have texting, which I don't give my cell phone number to clients. But if I had a way to do it and combine it all, I would pay more than that. I mean, but I still need that software, and they can text through the software.
Mm-hmm.
So a
The
business,
scheduling software?
yeah, they'll text through there.
Mhm.
So companies like mine or doctors' offices all have that capability through their software. So I don't know if a business like mine, the service industry, is a good target for you.
It is, well, I didn't want to get too complicated, but these are sort of the intercompany flexible plans. We envision in 2019 something more of like a corporate plan, where in the establishment of a corporate plan, you also get a legitimate phone number that then unlocks a bunch of different opportunities to SMS clients and so forth, but it's not your personal cell phone number.
Right.
So and I think from that base, there's things that we can do to get into your world.
Yeah, and what about the sharing documents, like for us? I mean, if I was to sign up, so we put all our workouts on OneDrive. So if I could just I've got all these things,
Right.
like you said, employees, I got all these young employees who just want to text conversations, and I can't keep track of what they said in
Right.
the text. So I don't know if that sharing files, it goes into,
Yes, we had the 4 tabs of the workspace, the conversation piece, the calendar, the file repository, which includes links, by the way. So we recognize that other tools are used. So you could conceivably have a link to that scheduling tool within Gravatate. So Gravatate still serves as the communication hub, and the relevant assets of files or other tools can also be accessed through Gravatate. So for example, in our leadership team, we just have a link. You upload a web link and it turns into a little tile. We have a link to our conference call software there.
Okay, Saul, Isaac Howard. You said at first about you don't want to have people texting from their personal phones. So is there a way that it masks like if you're emailing clients or texting clients and other people, is your number sort of masked, or you assign a sort of generic number that they can't start texting you personally for
Well, right now
unknown
it's
reasons?
it's chat in the cloud, so it really doesn't rely on your phone number at all. If you want to give us your phone number, it could be displayed in your profile, and we're going to make that more robust. So for example, in this group, you would probably want certain settings where it just says your name and company. But maybe in another intimate work group, you actually want your address and your phone number to display. So we're working on making it display whatever you want on a case by case. But the other piece of your question, I think, is you can be in Gravatate and send a chat to, say, Jen, and if she wasn't in Gravatate, she could reply from email. So when you think of clients, they can still sit in the comfort of email if that's their choice, but you could be within Gravatate and your dialogue with that person feels like a chat and a text, but for them it's still an email. And we want to do that same thing. It's a little trickier with SMS, but we want to do the same thing with SMS. So in this group, we might find that 6 people want text notifications, and the other folks want email notifications, and a handful want have fully adopted Gravatate, and so they don't want either. because they're coming to Gravitate every day.
Jen?
One of the messages that you said that really stood out was how, as a business owner, if your employees are texting clients, et cetera, you don't have control of that information because it's usually on their personal phone. Even if you provide a company phone, that's not usually what small business owners do because it's expensive. And I loved how you talked about Gravatate allows you to consolidate those messages into one place that I'm guessing you as the business owner can see. Is that fair? So,
Yes, in the
Okay.
corporate plan that we're developing, yes, those threads become, much like the
Property.
email account you
Yep.
provide for your employee, they become part of the corporate asset.
can you give me a quick example of how Gravatate has helped make things work better for your business or for a client that you know, where it made something happen faster or a clear case or problem that you solved?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the hunting and fishing for information. It's just, everything is in that one thread, and it just brings a whole lot of organizational ROI in terms of time saved and effectiveness. And it's also an interesting way, particularly with business groups, you know, people don't register and they're tagging along through the email. Like, you might have this board of 16 people and you think they're all equal. But you know, what we've learned by powering a few of these committees and councils and stuff is that there's a direct relationship between those who have signed up and what they're contributing to the organization versus the tag-alongs. So in a way, you might say all 16 of these people are equal volunteers, but really it's the 8 that got into Gravitate that are using it and communicating that are really the ones that are in it to win it, making a difference for your organization or your event or your fundraising. So it's like a private network, and we've learned this as well. I'll just share it, that our customer is the person subscribing and creating the workspaces, and there's a ROI for them in terms of authoring and engaging their audience through Gravitate. But there's another ROI, which is the busy professional on the other end doesn't have to hunt and fish for information anymore. They go to one place to be informed and participate with your organization. And that, you know, that's worth mentioning.
Okay, fair.
Barry Fake with Executive Advisors. Tell me what your thinking has been up to now with regard to the security of the information that's being shared, particularly in a workforce or a workspace that's looking at a particular business or business opportunity.
That's a great question. So if you visit our website, you look at our core values and kind of the business person's messenger and place to collaborate. We are advertising free, secure, and very private. So for certain organizations, as an example, Facebook groups is a reasonable choice, but for business professionals, we found that they want something a little more closed off, no advertising, you know, no influence from the outside world that kind of looks at odds with your organization and its mission. So we are private and secure, and we're using, you know, the best data hosting.
In the case of proprietary information, I immediately start to think about blockchain technology and figure that that's introducible if it isn't already a part of your planning into what you're doing.
It's something we're researching, but admittedly, it's not fully baked into our roadmap. But yeah,
Everybody's learning.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the
exactly.
lawyer in it. You have to-
We're in the learning phase of blockchain.
Natalie?
Natalie, Beyond Travel. So, price-wise, you said you've gone through a couple different versions, the $19.95 and the $39.95. How, you know, are you competing, or are you at a comfortable place with that? Have you gotten pushback from that? I don't know what the other companies are charging.
Well, it's a bit of a balance, right? We want to be, we get some reactions that it's too cheap.
Okay.
I will admit, we've run models and everything, we had some discipline around it, but we don't know that these price points are really calibrated for profitability. We just know that it's a fair starting point, and our intention is to always treat our customers fairly. So if the numbers have to go up, then, you know, you express it, and you give a lead time, and you do it the right way. For example, Basecamp used to be $39 a month. And then I think they just turned to like $129 a month. And they were able to keep all their users. From what we know, it's a private company, so we don't know exactly.
Okay. John?
John Rittenberg, cccSolutions.com. First, I think the business group is a terrific target. And on your first slide where you had your message, I thought it was a great comment. And when you spoke, I'm trying to deal with message first, which you asked about.
Yeah.
You spoke about collapsing text and email into one, which is amazing. It has a lot, and creating the workspaces where 3 of us can have an ongoing, and all of our stuff is right there. That's incredible. So now you have to really define your targets. And you said something about vendor relations, a great reason to use a workspace that differentiates you in many ways. So I'd like to think through, have you think through and tell us about reaching the company that needs 30 to 40 workspaces, because at $19.95, $20 a month, $240, your client acquisition cost can only be but so much. And so
You're right.
I ask, what is your right target? Because then you can message and price around that.
And that's why we established this pro pricing point, so that it can scale. And in Startups Ignite, some folks have guided us to looking at companies with a lot of vendors, maybe like property managers or things like this. And I think we'll get there. What was I going to say? But that scales for that price point. But it wasn't where we started vendor management necessarily, but it's sort of a surprise benefit to Gravatate. We have our social media person in a workspace, and I mean, everything she's ever done for us is there. It's not across 600 emails. So it's really cool. So that's something to exploit. We think we'll exploit the vendor management piece in the small business expansion. But I think we'll start with the business groups.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Culp with Educational Connection, and my question was a follow-up to the security question. Within a workspace, can you block people from seeing any kind of information that you are not trying to share with everyone in the workspace?
That level has not been crafted, and I always hesitate to go into that because then it gets into that very permission-heavy type thing.
Right.
There's probably a middle ground that we haven't inched our way towards, but for now, if you're in the group, you're seeing it. And that's, and if you want sidebars with 2 or 3 people, that's probably better done in chat. But the workspace is meant to be very transparent and
I have a follow-on.
democratic.
Is there a limit of, space in a workspace?
There's some fine print to this pricing, where there would be a gigabyte storage limit, but we're aiming to be generous where you either never hit it or you hit it 18 months from now, but it's fair. So we don't know what that is, but it's large because our competitive set is very generous with storage as well. So
we have time for a few more questions.
I'm Paula with Startups Ignite. I guess this is first a testimonial and shout out to Gravatate. So we've adopted Gravatate. We love it. We kind of not pitched email, but we replaced email before Gravatate using Slack, right? And we have a pretty large community. So it wasn't really economically viable for us to go from the free version to paid version of Slack. And Gravatate was already there cost and the price points. So yeah, and then I'm sure a lot of security people here have been using it. It's been really easy for us to get people on it because it doesn't force adoption, which brings me to my question, right? One of these unique value props of Gravatate is the fact that people who use it don't have to change behavior, but there's still pushback from people that are evaluating Gravatate, thinking that they still have to
yes.
change behavior. So, what are we going to do about that?
Absolutely, and the answer is we need to develop a FAQ and some real easy learnings on our website that we just currently don't have. So I think we've been hurting ourselves by not promoting and educating some of those things. And now we know that we have to because we've gotten stuck. having actually more functionality and flexibility than we were selling. So that's a shame on us kind of thing, but we're getting there.
Dave?
Two questions. One, clarification point on the workspace members. Is that up to 50 per workspace?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The other, maybe I'll force those ahead. More than one line at this point. So the other question was, when it comes to market research that you've done at this point, where do you anticipate base coming from? Existing users of other products or new users of this field?
We think it'll be a mix, and that's where I said with the other competing tools that we.
What proportion do you think?
Oh, I think it's gonna be 50-50. I think Greenfield is where we're gonna get going, but as I mentioned in the comment of zero, it's not a zero-sum game, or, you know, we don't have to lose for Slack or Microsoft Teams to win. There's enough going on, especially as we tilt towards business groups. Gravatate has an opportunity to become that place you go to for all work-related, but not your daily grind job necessarily. So we can, it's a relatively new learning we had in the last couple of weeks, but it's kind of powerful where, well, if I go there for 1 million cups and I go there for whatever other group I'm involved in or volunteer with, then it starts to become even more valuable to you. So we want to play that out if we can.
Go ahead.
Susan Trivers Consulting Group. Javier, I noticed that most of the questions that have come up have been technical questions, which, you know, makes sense. However, as the CEO and the person in charge of, you know, trying to develop a new client set, do you think that you would be more successful at focusing first on or I would say, I think that you'd be more successful at focusing first on the value so that your decision makers are not getting wrapped up in the technology, but they're seeing, wow, this is so amazing, and then the technology just comes along with all that cool benefit and value. So that, I mean, I'm not a technical person. I want someone to say, hey, this works, and here's how it works, and you can get started right away. But if I don't see any value to it, I won't try the technology. If I do see a lot of value, I'll do whatever it takes. So my recommendation is that you're thinking about who's your decision makers and not getting too much into the technology right away. And start with the value.
I think that's fair, and it's been, and what you witnessed today is an improvement from an uglier version. So I have gotten that, so probably didn't improve enough. But
Right. Well, no, I compliment you on your
no, but
presentation.
it's the framing the pain point and the value better is still something we're working on, so.
Jen, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Jen Dalton, Bryn Mawr, just a few thoughts. I don't know if you can white label or not, but I think that would be important.
I'm glad you said that. Part of our corporate plan is to have a white labeling solution, licensing solution, so that a large organization could make it their own.
Nonprofit pricing, and then maybe even annual pricing, or if you purchase 12 months, you get a discount. So just some other thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
Donnell has a question?
So I have two questions.
Oh, you only get one, I'm sorry. Time's up.
So it's just to build off of what Susan said. I like to talk about the as seen on TV commercials. They always start with the problem. I saw a commercial the other day where it was about, shirts not being long enough where you can't tuck them in, and now every time I think about not being able to tuck in my shirt, I think about that commercial. And so if you start with a problem up front, that will solve your issues. And then I came up with communicate, collaborate, and streamline your business using Gravatate.
Excellent.
That way, it tells a story of what you do at the same time. And last, that was 3 things, huh?
I'll let it slide. You're going to be back up here in a minute anyway.
Yeah. Last, how can 1 million cups help you, our community? How can we help you? How can we support you?
And that, just getting on today and getting into the workspace and all this feedback. But secondly, if if you run a team, whether it's an employee team or a business group, and you want to deploy Gravatate, we welcome that. And if you want our help in deploying that use case, we will jump up and down for you and help you do it. We've even done some folks, and we might end up incorporating this into our product, but some folks said, here are my 18 employees or 18 people, just set them up. Set them up with a temporary password. I don't want to deal with the invitation loop. So we've done that for folks. So any use case you have with a business group or your own company that you need help with, we'll white glove it for sure.
So, if anybody else has any other questions or any feedback, there is the, Laura, go ahead.
So
Last question.
No suggestion. Can I say suggestion?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I went to your webpage and I think you have a lot of work to be done. Because when I enter, I need to see the message immediately. So it's kind of confusing. So I will make a couple recommendations for your webpage, I think.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, we just released it, and so any feedback is extremely helpful.
And back to the thing about feedback, if you download the 1 Million Cups app and sign in and mark that you were here today, then you can go ahead and use the app to give any feedback or ask any questions that you have for Javier or for the team from Gravatate. So with that said, I'd like to turn the table back over to Donnell.
Let's give him a round of applause. So we know and we understand that when you come up here, you are exposing your brand new baby to the world, and we can understand exactly how you feel being up here presenting that. I want to say thank you from our 1 Million Cups team. That includes everybody in this room for sharing this with us and making us a part of your success. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
This is my second favorite part is not only do we get feedback, but we invite previous presenters to come back and tell their story about exactly what they implemented from the feedback that we gave them. And so we have...
There you go. You're out of frame.
But we have Ann Dolan here from Educational Connection Tutoring. She came, was it about a month ago, and she's going to tell us about what her challenge statement was and what she implemented. So Ann Dolan, please come up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Ann Dolan from Educational Connections Tutoring and Test Prep, and I was here in Javier's shoes. By the way, Javier, you rocked it. That was awesome. I loved it. Maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I'll just give you a background on my company and what my ask was. So I've had my business for 20 years, and we employ about 200 tutors. They travel to students' homes and help kids on a one-to-one basis improve their grades, improve their confidence, and overall do better in school. And along the way, help their parents reduce stress around academics. It's very labor intensive to do a student tutor match. There's a lot that goes into it in terms of, things like obviously subject area specialty, expertise, location, but we also do a personality match. So I was looking for ways to pivot my business. What are other offerings we could provide to families that aren't always tutoring? One of the ideas I had was leveraging our network of tutors. Again, we have about 200 current tutors, about 300 former tutors we've worked with over the years, to perhaps do something different. So my idea had been we could help independent schools that often have difficulty with hiring teachers for their classrooms based on our network. And so I asked for lots of feedback on that, which I got. But I also got some other things that I want to tell you about and what I've done with them. So I still have the idea of teacher placement, and we have 2 contracts from schools, so that's very positive. But what I also got, I think, is it Jen?
I'm the not Jen, I'm Krista.
Krista,
Two
sorry,
Jens.
I couldn't remember your first name. Krista, I think you gave me the idea of the membership model. And at first I'm like, what would that be like? I'm not quite sure. But then I thought about my own kids. I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I remembered sometimes they need help at the last minute. Like, I don't know how to do this Algebra 2 problem, or I don't know if my thesis statement is good. And so I thought of a membership model, and that parents could pay a set fee every month. I don't know what it would be, say $50, $100, and we have a tutor on call that they can access through